you think about it, it starts in 1849 and it moves here in 1903. And when it moves here in 1903, it has just made the decision not only to move here, which is important because it had been a little country lane serving a farming community outside of the main core of Catonsville. And then it just makes the decision to move here being on Frederick Road, which is Main Street, Catonsville. So it's sort of moving from kind of the ethnic farming base that it started with, moving to being in the center. This is the trolley line. This is where all the shops are. This is the heart of the new community. And I think that was really an important statement that it was making, and to shift to English. So it wasn't just to be a German club. It was going to be open to other folks. And I think that at that point, it really became a different kind of church. It became what I call the village or town church. Maybe if you think of the early church as a village church, then it becomes the town church. And the period from 1903 up until, say, after World War II, there's a way in which Catonsville is a small or big town, depending on how you think about it. I mean, sure, it's out here on the edge of Baltimore, and certainly people commute to work in some cases on the trolley or shop downtown Baltimore. But there's also a sense of it is sort of physically separate, and it's kind of out here as a kind of community in and of itself. So that's, I think, the period of it being the town church. You get to the 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. You have young families coming along. You have growing children, and so in the 1950s, this building we're sitting in right now, this educational building, is built because there's a clear need for more space for Sunday school and so forth. The place is kind of, really crowded, and so this is built. The original sanctuary built in 1903 was really quite a statement architecturally. Built of fine port deposit granite in a elegant sort of German European Gothic style. I mean, it could have been built a lot cheaper. It was really solid. It's a mighty fortress, right? When this building was built, this educational building, even though they were growing and they had all these kids and all this, need for more space, they built it a little bit on the cheap. It was not really built quite along the fine lines of the original church. I don't mean to make too much of that, but I kind of think it's interesting that at a point when they really had a reason to think that they could be taking off, they sort of trimmed their sails a bit.
As far as I can remember from what's been told to me, my great-grandfather came over from Germany in the mid-1800s. My grandfather was a member of the church when the church was at Old Salem. They tell me that he was instrumental, or at least involved in the selection of this site and moving the church from Old Salem out to here and the construction of the building. In the old Catonsville books, it shows that this property was once owned by J.A. Ruff, I believe, or J.G. Ruff, and the Ruff name is my mother's name. So I think there's a connection of the property to my mother. My grandfather was always involved in the church. I remember he was on the church council many years ago. He was instrumental, we're pretty sure, in the building of the church, and when the construction went through, when we built this wing, we found a beam in the basement of the old building, the old church, that had Rich Construction Company written on it. So that's been there since the early 1900s or late 1800s.
Ed Whetstone renamed most of the rooms.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. And so this room where the council and all met was the old nursery.
Right. And it was the library.
All the pictures was near.
Remember, it was the library too. Yeah.
Council, so that's where that met there.
Yeah, exactly. Said this whole hallway was all Sunday school rooms,
and
as well as upstairs was Sunday school rooms.
Right.
And you go downstairs to the old building, and it was not divided off like what it is now. There was not a main hallway down. It was like desolate, and
it was like
a
dungeon.
It was a dungeon. It was the catacombs. It was a dungeon, and it was kind of pretty scary when you're going from light switch to light switch, running between the lights, because you had to go through every single room,
Right,
if you
right.
remember, to get different places.
I mean, if you remember those steps,
I know.
they were nasty.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing that we didn't have some major injuries.
The main steps to the lower level were 1 foot away from the main entrance to the church. I mean, if you stepped in the main door of the church, which was as big,
About that
I guess
big.
it was about as big as the door behind Charlotte. But when you stepped in, the step to the basement was just right there. It was,
Like, what were they, slate or?
yeah.
And they were dark and slippery and.
A major piece of the renovation was that it knit these two buildings together in a way that they hadn't been able to function before. There was sort of a little channel, a small transition space or a large narthex between the two buildings. But it was kind of a crowded crossroads with two stairways in it, and the door to Frederick Road, and the door into the nave, and a door down the hallway. So it was
Not
it
very
made it difficult.
inviting.
What's that?
Not very inviting.
No.
No.
So by the renovation, putting the buildings together the way they are today, I mean, there is a flow of activity from one to the other. We use the whole building in a way that it had not been used for some years.
It also allowed us to consolidate the Sunday school in one area. It also gave us access to the Reformation Hall, which up until that time got very little use, I think, except for if we did a play back there or something. I mean, a lot of people almost didn't know it was there. Behind the nave, it was not somewhere that you went regularly. So we had some issues with our building in terms of accessibility, which obviously that helped to override with the installation of the elevators and put the ramp in the basement, for access to Bethany Hall. The moving from the music room up to a level that even with the choir loft, kind of just those kinds of things. So that was change that was intended and I think has worked out well. I do remember there were people that were not happy with the plan to spend all that money.
And I remember I was at a funeral here, and it was a very prominent person. It was Bob Ruff. And so anyway, he was talking to Jack Davis, who was an accountant, and he said, "Oh, you guys got an elevator?" And I said, "Yeah, it costs a lot of money." It was like,
No, it was
a
like
bit, it was.
50,000.
I was going to say $40,000 or $50,000.
Yeah, it was a good bit. It added to the total sum. And he says, "Does it go all the way to heaven?"
It's unfortunate,
Yeah.
but,
But
consequently, I think this congregation, as Larry says, is a family. We can
Right.
all say, I would think, I'll speak for myself then, with our family situations, there's always some controversies, there's always some hard feelings, there's always happy times, there's always sad times. That's what Salem
It's okay.
congregation is.
But you're a
And you have-
family still.
Well, you
Stick together.
try to work together to
Stick
make things
together.
come out for the best of the community, for the best of the family. And, we've been very fortunate in that respect that we are able to overcome bad feelings, hard feelings, financial anguish, and come out, and move forward with it.